Welcome home, all. Apologies, a few minutes late. Having some some fun and some hijinks prior. Nothing major. Thank you for being here. Today is Tuesday, August 26th, 2026, and regular schedule this week. Reminder: last week I have the Veterans Day Parade meeting on the Thursday. So again, just the third week in. If it's reiteration, I apologize, but I want to make sure that you know our schedule so we're consistent. Only the third week in a month do we do Tuesday, Wednesday because of my meeting, and every other week is normally going to be the Tuesday, Thursday, until we can get to that point. And I thought we were close, but we're not. It's day to day. I'll let you know, but getting to some additional content material that isn't specifically just what we're doing here, but just a reminder for those who have been with me a while, family, friends that know me or go back a bit. I did, when Supermax Nation prior, when not on the radio station, because that was me for the most part. But I did have guests, and then when it was no longer on the radio station, and I did my own stream, and podcast stream, whatever. It was I had some of my most fun or best times and some of the best shows interviewing other people. And I won't go too far here, but I've been told that I'm good at dialoguing, conversing, and questioning other people and bringing things out of them, getting answers and coming up with good content that way, good information. I do like having others and having people that have an expertise or a background or a skill set in a particular area that I may not, in which case then that allows me to learn too. And that's kind of quite literally the genesis of want on that way. In that way, I like asking questions because I want to learn something too. I am a very bright guy, but I don't think I'm brighter than any other. I don't try to pretend to be smarter than the universe or the world. I would like to say I'm extremely smart because I'm smart about what I do not know and unafraid to go into those arenas and try to learn more without trying to be an expert and talking about things that I don't know as well as another. And again, and I know I've said that more than a few times on air about our show. In general, where I'm going to speak authoritatively on. Again, United States, its foreign policy, our force posture, our military, our foreign relations. Those are of particular interest to me over a lifetime's worth of learning and studying and everything that goes with it in the social sciences as a whole. And for those of you that might be new tonight and, for just this one show, I did teach U.S. history, academic decathlon, and AP European history. So those are my wheelhouses. That is my wheelhouse. The social sciences, history in particular, and then the communication of that intel, that information, that education. I would say I'm well above average in those areas, not shit talking or bragging, just a lifetime's worth of work to be good at those things. And so it's not bragging if you are good at what you do and you don't say it in a malicious way, you don't say it in a way that's meant to demean or take away from another. And that is quite literally what I'm saying to you tonight. That is how you can be extremely confident in some areas of interest to you without being arrogant or cocky or just shit talking and bragging. That's how you do that. And for the record, wasn't born that way. I don't think anybody is. I was raised a little that way by my mother and a father that I can't tell you how many times that, he told me when I was little, you don't have to tell people how good you are. They'll know if you're good enough. If you're that good, they'll know, even if they don't want to admit to it. So that's the way I was raised. And then like some raw steel, I was tempered and beaten into, fine form using the, weaponry analogies, sword analogies, but tempered in process as to being confident and extremely good at something without being overly braggadocious and cocky or arrogant. The military, the Army, in my particular case, is very, very good at building and structuring people to be extremely confident at what they do without sounding like they're cocky or arrogant, just extremely confident. So my point to finish up tonight's opening segment, I was raised a little that way, and then I was taught and trained that way by the United States Army. 1st Infantry Division, U.S. 1st Division Forward, Göppingen, Federal Republic of Germany. Before it was one Germany, it was two back then. Okay, so thank you for being here. 2 shows this week. Thursday will be the heavier in meat content show than tonight. Because tonight, as it happened, let's just say I'm going to push some things, back to Thursday because of probably the single most talked about or covered item today, at least today, the death of Dolly Parton. If you're old enough, I mean, look, you could be young, and young relative to me anyway, young in your 20s and 30s. I'm not talking about kids, children, but young enough to have grown into adulthood and have been around long enough to maybe know some things in entertainment or music, etc. And if so, if you're in your 20s, maybe 30s, up to 40s, you know the name Dolly Parton. You might know she's, from music and the music industry as entertainment. And as you scale in age from the decade of your 20s, your meaning whoever's out there, or your 30s, or your 40s, and as you scale up in age in those decades, you will become, or you are, more aware and more attuned to who Dolly Parton was and is. Lady passed, but I'm going to talk to her, talk about her and talk to her in the present tense tonight. But she's been around a long time, and I was just talking to a buddy of mine right now, right prior to coming, and we're just kind of joking, like, because we're roughly, he's a little older than me, roughly the same age, but we're joking about the fact that the ubiquitousness of Dolly Parton in entertainment over roughly, maybe not quite, but roughly 7 decades, 6 to 7 decades. That encompasses the big chunk of the United States population in adulthood. All right, that's a big chunk of people. Most people, I would say it's most people. And I just know that I grew up with her in some capacities in terms of music. I know that, and movies. So what I'm not going to do tonight, and what I don't want to do, is do what I've seen all day. I'm going to give you my piece from my perspective and make it contextually relevant to today in her passing. Like, we can do all the songs. I think I would hazard a guess and say that most people in America, including younger people, don't know all of her songs, but if you heard one or two of her more famous songs, they're like, oh yeah, you would then kind of know it. And you would definitely not know how many songs she's responsible for in the written sense, meaning she may have not have sung it, or it may become more popularized by some other singer that sang one of her songs or writing. And I will say that, and this is no disrespect to the lady, but just a straight assessment, as I was alluding to or talking about, in the first segment here, about just being honest and emotionless in process, right? I would say for me, I will know her, and we'll get to some other things, but in terms of music and entertainment, I will know her more of as a writer than as, say, a pure vocalist. Okay, just as a singer. I would know her more of as a writer. in my lifetime of watching Dolly over the course of her life. Obviously, she's older than me, and I grew up with her. As long as I can remember, I remember Dolly. And I would say she is more of an entertainer than even strictly a vocalist or a singer. And if you're talking about entertainment over the course of a life, she's been entertaining like since she was, I want to say early teens. If I'm wrong, anybody out there, feel free to correct me, drop it in the comments, help me out a little bit, educate me a little bit. But I don't have stuff in front of me, not going to do that. But she's been around a long time. And I know her music because I grew up with it as a kid. My mom and dad used to listen to some of her music. I know specifically duets with Kenny Rogers that we used to listen to, and other, musics and country and musicians that she collaborated with, etc. So the lady's been around a long time. So this is the one thing that this is my piece, my point in talking about her tonight. And there's a lot of good things to say about Dolly. Let's make it two. I'm sorry. Let's make it two. I'm going to make it two things tonight that you remember from this show about Dolly Parton. That are not specifically what everybody else will be talking about. But again, I'm adding my particular input to the death of this lady and why are we talking about it other than she's a music icon, et cetera, right? And those are all valid because that would happen anyway. But I want to go beyond that. I want to go a step further. I want to add intellectual heft and social awareness to more than just a lady who sang some songs, performed, and wrote songs. Okay, so two reasons. One I'll get to in a second, or after I do this first part. But the first one is I had this. And if it's offensive, I apologize up front. But I'm probably not really apologizing because this is what I believe. You can question my right or wrong. That's fair. But I believe, Supermex believes that there have been only 3 true queens in country music in my lifetime, or because country music goes farther back than my age. There's only 3 in my view of country music. 3 queens that that identify, crystallize, and encapsulate what it is to be country. That genre, that concept, that social structure. Country and Western. I had the Western because you don't hear as much country and Western that way anymore. Country and Western is more at the beginning, at the inception of what would become country music. So here they are. These are my 3 queens of country music. I don't think a whole lot of you are going to disagree with the 3 that I name. You might want to add, but I'm holding to my 3. I'm not adding anymore. At least not now. It's going to take a lot to move me off that. But right now, I think there only ever has been 3. 3. You can agree with me and say that what about so-and-so? What about? You do the what about thing, and more power to you. I got nothing against you. That's your choice. But these are my 3. First, and I would say the beginning of it, at least in the national conscience, the national structure of what country music was growing out of and into and up into, would be Patsy Cline. Okay, Patsy Cline. And like she's like the alpha, right? The beginning of what a woman in country would be as a headliner and standalone item as a vocalist, singer, performer. Patsy Cline. So there'll be fisticuffs and chingazos if you disagree with me that Patsy Cline shouldn't be called a queen of country. All right, we'll throw chingazos for that one. All right, so that's one. That's one. If you're listening to me and you're one of mine, if you're Supermex Nation, The show for the thinking Mexican, the show for the thinking American. You might get the second one, and you'll see why I'm getting to 3, which is Dolly. Obviously, that's the obvious, right? But number 2 for me is Loretta Lynn. Okay. Loretta came after Patsy Cline. And I would say she took that country music football and ran with it and grew it and made it more from Patsy Cline. And again, as I've said before, I've already stated, there are others. I know that. There are other women, and I can name some of them that were pretty badass in country music. But you want to create a select list, it's got to be a select list. If I'm putting together an op, and I need a demolitionist, and I need a weapons expert, and I need a communications expert, I'm not asking for 5 of each. Just give me one, okay? Select group. So Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, and Dolly Parton. Now, clearly, Dolly has passed today at 80. And she lasted a good long time. Would have been nice if she had lasted longer, obviously. But the other ladies did not last to 80 and as long. And they were earlier, meaning in time. They were born earlier. And they were from a prior time, right? But there is a Venn there, like a Venn diagram, the crossover, right? Where these ladies were alive at one time during the life of the other. Okay. So even though Patsy Cline was older and first, Loretta Lynn came along and there was still a Patsy Cline. And then Dolly came along and there was still Loretta. But those are my 3, ladies and gentlemen. If you disagree with them, or you tell me that one of those is not a queen or all of them are not a queen, I think you're nuts. But you're an American. You have the right to disagree with me. And I would quite literally sign my name on a piece of paper and die for your right to disagree with me. But those are my ladies. Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, and Dolly Parton. Now, to stick to point on what we're talking about in this particular segment, which is Dolly Parton, God rest her soul. Dolly Parton, I kind of had, and I'm going to say it, and this is a part that'll probably like make some people not happy. And don't get angry. This isn't an anger thing, by the way. It's a good thing. It's just a difference, or maybe some might disagree. Fair. But I've watched The Voice for many years since it first started, watched almost every single season since. And a handful of years ago, after Blake had left, they got another country person to take his place, and it was Reba McEntire. Now, I like Reba. I like her music, and I've liked what she has done with her life in performing and growing up as a country musician. But I did kind of have a problem with them calling her the queen of country, like on this show and in other ways. Because in my world, it's literally the queen is dead, long live the queen, right? You understand my point? You don't anoint, call, designate, or say someone is the queen unless there is no other queen. There's only one. So we're talking about country music. Then that has always been Dolly for me. And until Dolly's no longer here, then I would think and consider maybe calling someone else queen. So and I'm going to say it, it's going to sound real kind of mean, but maybe not mean, but hard. I'm going to need some time, because Dolly's been the queen for me in country music for a long time, since Loretta was gone. Okay. And obviously well before that, Patsy Cline, because Patsy Cline died early. So only now in my world can you have that discussion about who's the queen of country. Only now, not before. And so I'm kind of left over with that bad taste in my mouth of hearing some people call Reba McEntire the queen while Dolly was still alive. That's a no-go for me. That is a no-go. No, can't. Sabe que no. Don't. So I'm going to leave it there and leave it because we're talking about Dolly tonight. But anyway, those are my three: Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, and Dolly Parton. Those are my three. Those are the queens of country to me, and will always be that for me. If another comes along and she becomes that, then so be it. But for right now, it's only those three for me. Only based on life, body, influence, impact, all of it. Representation of what they are, the genre, the social movement, the entertainment, all of it. Okay. So let me finish on the point with Dolly. Dolly, of those three ladies, was really the only one that went beyond what the other two were. I remember being a young guy, a kid, watching 9 to 5. 9 to 5. With Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton. And Dolly being the coolest of them all. Jane Fonda was the badass. It's, they had the different roles, but Dolly was the coolest. And then the song. And the song, right? 9 to 5. It's still played. I mean, it's still a damn good song to listen to. So that's what I remember. But I'm going to give you two movies in particular that I remember about Dolly, right? That stuck with me my entire life and will always stay with me when I hear her name. One, 9 to 5, and The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Some of you may not even know what that is if you're younger, but The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas with Burt Reynolds. Because that is the movie. If you've never seen it, go see it. It's hysterical. Dom DeLuise is in this thing, and he is crazy nuts funny, that dude. It was kind of a comedy knot. It was awesome. And I won't give you the premise, won't go over the show. My point is this. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. That was the movie, and she wrote a song and performed it called I Will Always Love You. Okay? There's an entire generation that don't know that is not a Whitney Houston written song. Because Whitney Houston took that song and did incredible things with it of her own. Acknowledged and respected for what she did for it, right? But that's a Dolly song. She wrote it. And she performed it in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And her and Burt Reynolds were awesome together. They were funny as hell. They had great chemistry. They were awesome. But that is what I remember. And last point here. Dolly crossed all social and all ethnic and all other dividers. And I'm going to segue into my final point here. I said two things, right? Two things. That lady was beyond the simple, okay? That lady was beyond just being a thing or being good at something. She was Pan, P-A-N. She encompassed, was more than, became more than herself. She took in all. So yes, she was a musician. She was a songwriter. She was a singer. She was a performer. She was an actress. As time went on, as she grew older, she was not just a philanthropist, but an activist in some ways that most musicians will never be. She cut across, as I said, all boundaries, colors, shapes, sizes, backgrounds, religions, geographies. She became global. I'm going to slow down, but my point is, like, if you don't know about Dolly, research her, study her, learn her. The lady passed today. But I'm going to say this because I've said it once before on a show. I've said this once before on a show. She was a real American. What I think America is. Not because she was white. Not because she was a musician. But because she was universal in her approach to living and being and existing. She cared about way more than herself. She gave a damn and put the money where her mouth was. She made money, but she gave so damn much of it back to people from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all colors, all over the country, all over the world, in every goddamn way. And she grew up from nothing with nothing. The humble beginning American story. That's why I loved her. And the only other time that I've said that was, for those of you that do know me and know where I'm at with it, is Chris Christopherson. I don't want to spend time today on Chris Christopherson. Those who know me well enough to know that he is like one of my all-time great Americans, not just musician, actor. Notice the pattern, though? They were good at everything they chose to do, and they chose not to just do a thing. They were good. And I'm going to emphasize an air quote, good. They were good. They were good people. They were good human beings. And that is what Dolly was. And so my final point, like I said, the second, I'm doing it tonight. I've covered the first 20-something minutes on this lady, but it's instructive. It's educative. It's a learn for you if you don't know her. And even if you do know her, I'm going to synthesize and crystallize some thoughts on her to help you, if you know Dolly, knew Dolly, understand, watched her movies, listen to her music, understood her philanthropy, understood her activism, understood the powerful quotes and interviews she gave that just made her a better person than the average walking around. But right now, today, contextually, God damn it, we need some people like that. We need people like that. People that we can universally get behind and agree on. People universally that we can all love and respect and admire and show love for. Because there's like not a damn thing bad you can say about the lady. And we need more of that. We, us, Americans, humans, we need more of that. Now, to finalize my point with Dolly, and as I said, there's only one time I've said this before. I said it about Chris Christopherson. She's a great American. Chris Christopherson is a great American. I tell you what, Epiphany, maybe I need to do more shows or spend more time in content on displaying, exhibiting, elucidating, elucidating, great Americans. The examples of what I believe great Americans are. People doing things the right way. People that are making themselves in this country better. Instead of spending a lot of time, which we do, on the people that are making this country worse or doing things to it that are damaging, that are selfish, as opposed to selfless. That don't give a shit about this country. They don't give a shit about the things that are positive, that are good, that are right, that are the real America. Not the idealized horseshit version of what we thought or think it was, but what it actually is. And sifting out the good in that. Because that's the work that needs to be done. If you don't do that work, you don't get the good. Digression. But the point is, maybe I need to do more of that because I'm doing it now. I'm pointing out two Americans that I think are great Americans, that were great Americans, and that remain a guiding principle and example for a man and a woman, for a young boy or a young girl to take a look at their life and learn about what being a good American is. Now, these two particular are famous or were famous or have attention. I don't think you need to be just have that to be a great American. I don't. A lot of good people in the military, a lot of good soldiers, a lot of good commanders, a lot of good others that are great Americans, but will never get any attention. Anyway, the point is our kids and our people, yes, the show for the thinking Mexican and American, Supermex Nation, Dolly's white, Chris Christopherson's white, non-Mexican. But they're examples. I grew up with them. I wanted to be like Chris Christopherson. He's a badass. That dude is awesome. And I would guess there's a young Mexican girl out there that grew up thinking that Dolly Parton was pretty damn awesome too. Cuts across those racial and ethnic lines, right? And that is my context for tonight in speaking about Dolly Parton. The message that I want you to get out of tonight's show that we started with tonight, which is she was for everybody. Didn't matter what color she was. Didn't matter where she was from, Appalachia. Didn't matter how big her family was, not small. Didn't matter how much money she had, not much. She was just a great American and a good example for others to follow. Okay? So again, contextually, I do think that even the MAGA cult cannot take shots at Dolly. If you are, you're sorry as all hell. But even the cult members in MAGA can't say anything negative about Dolly too much. I know that they don't like the fact that she gave money to a lot of different types of people, Black, Hispanic, you name it. She did a lot of things for poor people. She did a lot of things for people that did not have things. Groups that MAGA cult members would probably not want to admit to that she did for, but she did. But she did. And that's what makes her badass. She did the right thing throughout pretty much, her whole life. She gave of herself to others. And it wasn't predicated on a skin color or where she grew up. She did it for everybody. Again, so last point, contextually, again, for today, for now, for where we are, as this lady passes today at 80, maybe just one day out of this miserable goddamn year and out of this miserable goddamn Donald Trump term as a president, maybe today, even his cult can agree that this lady was something special and deserves our respect and attention and love as she concludes her life. Okay, let's get to some of the not pretty stuff, but awesome. But those are the messages that's the message I want for you to take home tonight. If you get nothing else, even after what we finish up with next, okay, remember that she was a great American. She wasn't just a singer. She wasn't just a performer. She wasn't just a songwriter. She wasn't just an actress. She wasn't just a philanthropist. She wasn't just an activist. She was all of that shit and more, and more. That's what I want you to remember for tonight. I want you to remember that she was a great American. And I'll say this before I move on. That's why you should watch my show, because those are the things that I point out. Not the same old shit that everybody else does, but what I believe are the more important, the more serious, and the more consequential items or issues in the day's news. So I've given you a hell of a lot more than Dolly Parton was just a great musician and icon. She was a part of our fabric. She is who we are. And it's up to us to go find more of her in other places. Okay, today is day 179 of the Trumpstein War. Tomorrow will be 180. When we come back on Thursday, it'll be 181. Roughly, not to the exact minute, obviously, or hour, but roughly half a year, 6 months, we've been at war. And I'll tell you what, so I had materials that I had planned for today from the weekend after I did some reading, research, some study on some items that I wanted to provide you. And then, news came out early today that Dolly Parton dies. And it gets pushed because, as I've already stated in the prior segment, there are some things that are just that important and they need to be talked about more, and they're positive. And we do need to balance the positive with the negative as much as possible. It's not easy in the world we're living in the country we're living in, with the ass hat clown that we have as president. It's not easy. It's extremely difficult. But I'm going to hold the eloquence and the elegance that I have in my tongue for today in speaking about this lady and hold this other for the Thursday because it can wait. I mean, is Donald Trump's approval rating going to go any lower? It's about in the toilet as it is. I guess it can go down the toilet. Not going to matter too much between now and Thursday, I guess. But I'll leave that there. The point ultimately is we are at half a year. We are at half a year. And I think, so this is what I'm going to do. What I will do is I will come in on the Thursday. And for my people, my show, for the thinking Mexican, the thinking American, I'm going to provide you with data. I do love doing that. And for the record, I've talked to some of you, and you do like the fact that I give you facts, not just opinion, but facts and data with which to arm yourself and prepare yourself and defend yourself against the evil MAGA cult. But yeah, we're gonna go over the data, and let's call it an overview of a half year of a war that the overwhelming majority of this country did not and does not want. Half a year of a war that has seen Americans kill women and children and innocents in another country. Half a year of a war that has degraded, downgraded, and stained our nation's military. And that is not hyperbole. That is a fact as of today, at least in the eyes of the rest of the globe, if not in the eyes of all of America, all of us. It is for me. But as I've stated before, and I mention quite often, I source my material, my intel, my information, not just from what we get here in America in the form of media, social media, etc. I read a lot from outside sources in other countries, and I watch legitimate news shows that actually still have some journalistic integrity in what they report. And it is there. This half year of the Trumpstein War, day 179, as we sit, has stained, degraded, downgraded, tarnished our reputation and our perception as a military. As a military, it has. So much so that even members of our military, past and present, are saying the same damn thing. And that's a problem. So let's do that. We will come back on the Thursday, and I will give you facts, data on the damage that our country has sustained and the damage that our military has sustained in personnel, materiel, IEL, and reputational harm to our nation's military. What is generally understood, generally accepted as the greatest military machine on the planet and in the history of the world. It is that. That is not exaggeration. That is not hyperbole. That is not exaggerating. That is a fact. And so by extension, it is also not a fact, or excuse me, by extension, it is also a fact that if there is damage, harm, tarnishment to that military, then yes, guys like me have a problem with it. And you should too, as an American, because that is the umbrella of protection that this country sleeps. Go watch A Few Good Men. You get it a little bit, right? But you get the concept as a whole. But A Few Good Men. You sleep under the umbrella of protection and security that I provide you, the United States military, to the average civilian. Okay, so let's do that. And that way we go off into the weekend armed with useful information, intelligence, facts, and data. Those are the weapons of informational war today, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the weapons of informational war in today's America that you need to arm yourself with so you can defend yourselves and those around you. Yeah, let's do that on the Thursday. My final thought before we sign off tonight is nothing but love and respect for the lady that passed today. Depending on your faith or what you believe in, there's a heaven. I think the angels are like literally playing banjos as she comes up. I'm not joking. Seriously. Yeah. That's got to be a good time that she's there. Yeah. Awesome lady. Great American. Nothing but love for Dolly Parton. Nothing but love for you guys. Thank you for being here. We'll be back on the Thursday with some hard material. Got to arm yourselves. Like I said, in this current climate that we exist in today in this country, these United States, you must be armed with facts, data, and information, because it is an informational war that we are waging today in the United States. Nothing but love for you. We'll be back on the Thursday.